Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Blue Line Blast podcast here. Jim Biringer alongside Matthew Blittner. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, here in the United States. And, of course, if you celebrate in Canada, too, why not double the turkey and double the football on a Thursday? But before we get there, we got to talk a lot of hockey. Matthew, welcome back.
Glad to be back, as always, Jim. Happy Thanksgiving, one and all. And, I've always found it strange that, we say, extra football for, the Canadian friends on Thanksgiving. Canadians love their hockey. Like, there should just be, extra hockey for them on Thanksgiving. Should there not?
I mean, they technically do have it hockey on their own holiday on Canadian Thanksgiving, which is our Columbus Day and stuff. But there is no hockey period on Thanksgiving, not even north of the border. But
maybe that should change.
But speaking of north of the border, Vancouver, what are we doing? Jim Rutherford, again, we're opening our mouth, and you just give everybody something to talk about, good, bad, or indifferent. Now Quinn Hughes, rumors back on the table. Everybody's on the table, open for business, trading veteran players to get younger, but we still want to win. What's the game plan in Vancouver, Jim? Seriously, buddy, what is it?
Well, first of all, Jim Rutherford has never been afraid. He's never shies away from the bold, whether it's a bold move or a bold statement. That's just Rutherford in a nutshell. That's always been his MO. Now, I will say, what is it, Jim, about the few days before Thanksgiving, U.S. Thanksgiving, that leads either a president of hockey ops or a general manager of hockey or a general manager to go ahead and just say, oh, yeah, all of our veterans are open for business. Last year, what is it? We just passed the anniversary of Chris Drury sending out the memo.
Yep.
Now today we've got Jim Rutherford sending out this. It's not quite a memo, but, making the statement. Jim, I thought Thanksgiving was supposed to be a fun holiday for everybody, and yet they're doing their best to not make it a fun holiday for anyone, so they want everyone thinking about who's going to get traded. And
the issue is here, real quick, it's not all the veterans. It's guys that are UFA. Well, if you go down that list, it's not many guys. Kiefer Sherwood, Derek Forbert, Teddy Bluger, David Camp, who they just picked off of waivers, and Connor Garland, who new extension doesn't kick in until next year. Vander Kane has a 16-team no trade. I mean, it's kind of slim pickings outside of Kiefer Sherwood.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to get back the franchise-altering pick or franchise-altering player by trading any of those guys, really. And I know that the comments, said that, Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes were not going to be traded. That's never stopped Rutherford before. Not that we should, feed into it. I firmly don't believe that Quinn Hughes is being moved anytime this year. Maybe next offseason, maybe. I don't see Quinn Hughes being moved this year. It's just not happening.
I'll second that. I will second that with you. I am a firm believer in that. I think, if anything, he said it himself. July 1st, we'll all find out his decision.
Right, yeah. Then, Elias Pettersson, could he be moved? I mean, I suppose maybe if the right offer came along, he could be moved. But what are you going to... I mean, you're obviously going to ask a lot for Elias Pettersson, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're starting with at least a first, maybe a second, and a mid-level pick. That's probably the starting point, and it's probably going to be more than that. Not to say it's impossible. I mean, we did see Mikko Rantanen get traded last year. We did see JT Miller get traded last year. So I'm not going to say it's impossible. I find it hard to believe that they would necessarily trade Pettersson this year. I think two eyes to keep an eye on, though, and Jim, I think you might disagree with me because both have new contracts. Thatcher Demko and Brock Besser. So first of all, Thatcher Demko's in the last year of his current deal, but he's already signed a brand new 3-year extension that kicks in next year for $8.5 million per. And then For Brock Besser, he's in the first year of a brand new 7-year, $7.25 million per deal. Jim, if Rutherford truly wants to make a difference, if Rutherford truly wants to have that landscape-altering, franchise-altering trade, that's where you're going to get it. Now, I don't necessarily believe that that's going to happen this year with those two, but that's where you would get the franchise-altering in return.
And the issue is the Canucks are going to Canuck because I'm taking the Manny being Manny and and bringing it over to Canucks are going to Canuck because let's look back at the history real quick. And it's going to take me 30 seconds. During the year, JT Miller, before he signed his extension, went on a heater, but everybody was talking about, he's gonna get traded, and then he signs an 8-year deal. Obviously, we saw how that worked out. He's in New York now. Same thing with Elias Pettersson, then he signs his extension. By the way, if there was really a beef, I keep asking this question. If there was really a beef between these two, why did both guys get 8-year extensions? Like, I just don't get that one. But again, Canuck gonna Canuck. And then Brock Besser was supposed to be out the door. Resigns, extends, and then Thatcher Demko, that contract to me, 3 years, fine, but you gave him a full new move clause through all 3 years, and again, he's hurt, and you traded Arthur Sivas to Pittsburgh, and you gave Kevin Lankinen an extension. It's just a lot of it is bad decision making because, and everybody else has full no move clauses. Like, I get it, moving those players would be great, but you can't do it. And Besser's so comfortable, he wants to stay there. And maybe it's the same thing with Quinn Hughes. He's comfortable there and he wants to stay there. Obviously, there's, as Rutherford said in multiple, there's different factors and that carry with things. And I've talked to some people, the brother thing is a real thing. But again, Quinn Hughes is an elite franchise generational talent, something the Canucks have never had in their franchise history. You're not winning that trade. You didn't win the JT Miller trade. You will not win a Besser or Demko or Pettersson trade. It's like you got to, and I think a lot of this too is message sending to the guys to play better. But all these guys got no move clauses. It's not, guys can waive them to go places, but they all want to go to win. So what are you getting?
Yeah, look, it's a message, all right, not necessarily the right message. I mean, how many times do we see GMs or presidents of hockey ops, say things to try to motivate, and then it blows up in their face? Case in point, Chris Drury last year. Case in point, we're going to talk in a moment, Barry Trotz. That hasn't blown up in his face yet, but it probably will. I will say with Vancouver, Jim, if you remember at the beginning of the year, during training camp, when we were going through our predictions, what did I say? I said Vancouver was going to finish second to last in the Pacific Division.
Yep.
You scoffed a little bit. You thought maybe they might be a little bit higher up. Not playoff-wise, but you thought they'd be a little higher up.
Yeah.
I heard from a number of people who watch our show and thought, Vancouver's probably going to be, in wild card contention. Jim, the Thanksgiving poll is couple days away that people always put so much stock in, right?
Yep.
Vancouver is currently second to last in the Pacific Division, third to last in the Western Conference. Can I pick them or can I pick them?
I think 100% right on it too. I think the reason I went a little higher was because Demko, if he could have stayed healthy, I think this
Goalies
is a difference.
don't get healthier as they get older.
No, and especially Demko, who had a mysterious knee skiing type injury. Like, he didn't get hurt skiing, but he had like a skier's type knee injury that is like still mysterious. And I just, again, if they could have put it together, maybe. But again, we'll see. Look, yeah, Vancouver, a lot of issues in Vancouver.
Well, as you said, sorry to cut you off. As you said, Canucks gonna Canuck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
so they are.
Put things together. Canucks gonna Canuck.
It's true. They are. I mean, look at the history. That's what they do. And look, if they trade Elias Pettersson, Corey Schneider, Roberto Luongo all over again, and you're back to square one. So look, if Vancouver's got issues, then what the heck does Nashville have going on in Music City? because I think they got issues too. And Barry Trotz, I mean, he's putting it on the players, but he's also putting them on himself and the coach and everybody. Look, Florida put up a snowman in Nashville. They don't get a lot of snow there. They put an 8 spot up. They did. I mean, they did. And all this talk about we need to play better, coaching our butts off, this, that, and the other thing. This team is poorly constructed. Oh, we want to get younger, bigger. Matt, you had Yaroslav Askarov in your system, Tommy Novak, Dante Fabro, Philip Tomasino, Eli Tolvanen. All of them are out the door. Not just under Trotz's watch, but under David Poyle's watch too. They put Eli Tolvanen on waivers. Dante Fabro on waivers. You would have been in a better position now than you are to go with the old guys. And now he's like, all options are on the table, including letting the coach go. The coach should have been fired when they got back from Sweden. I'm sorry. I like Andrew Brunette. I do. He's just a better assistant coach than he is as a head coach.
Well, first of all, it's an about face in the last, 24 hours, really? Because Barry Trotz has firmly, ever since the trap hit the fan last year, he's been very much a proponent of keeping Andrew Brunette, being in his corner, saying that it was on the players, that it was on him, but pretty much guarding Brunette, saying that it wasn't on him. So over the last 24 to 48 hours, things are changing there a little bit. And I have to say, unlike Rutherford, who has made a career on bold moves, bold statements, Barry Trotz obviously was a very successful head coach. Now he's a GM, 2-3 years? He's, how do I want to phrase this about Barry? He's not known for whether or not he's actually going to follow through on the bold statement. Yeah. And what's backing that statement up for me that I just made, last year, they get off to a horrendous start. And Barry Trotz said, okay, everything's on the table. They don't turn around. We're going to go in a different direction. We'll go into a rebuild and all that. And he said that, I think it was right around this same time last year. Jim, trade deadline came and went, nothing.
Nothing.
Draft came and went, nothing. Free agency came and went, nothing. Jim, I know Barry wanted to put the fear of God into his players to motivate them. Because, as a coach, he always motivated his players very well. But, for all his talk of, okay, well, if you don't play better, we're going to go in a different direction. He had the golden opportunity. He had 3 golden opportunities, and he didn't do it.
No.
Okay? It's not like he said it, at the draft last year, oh, if we don't turn things around, we're going to, we're going to go into a different direction. He said it early in the season last year. He had a trade deadline, he had a draft, and he had free agency, all to make bold moves, and he didn't back it up. No. And then, what's the legal definition of insanity? Doing the
same thing over and over again.
Expecting a different result. It's like Brian Cashman with the Yankees. You expect, that, oh, well, if the players play up to the back of their baseball card, maybe they just can't play up to the back of their baseball card. They're another year older, more injuries, all that. So Barry Trotz saying, oh, well, we're going to basically run it back this year. Well, but Barry, I thought you said last year that if the players didn't perform better, you were going to go into a rebuild. So they didn't play better. You didn't go into a rebuild, and now you're threatening the same thing all over again?
Yikes. Yeah, and the worst part for me with this is I look at it this twofold. When they signed Stamkos and Marchessault, they just needed one guy. They needed to go get a center. They didn't get a playmaker. It's like the Rangers scenario. Remember all the way back when Scott Gomez and Chris Drury got signed by the Rangers? Well, they were playmakers. You needed goal scorers. And you had 2 of the same player. Well, you have 2 of the same player with Stamkos and Marchessault, and you have no facilitators. Oh, and add Forsberg in there. Well, you can't get Stamkos the puck. He doesn't want to shoot it for some reason on 2-on-1.
Which is mind-boggling.
Which is mind-boggling because he shoot all the time in Tampa. I really do believe his heart is still in Tampa. And I would not be shocked would not, and this is my blast from the blue line, but I've been putting it out there. I would not be shocked he goes back to Tampa in a trade. I just wouldn't be shocked because they've done it before. They've done it before with McDonough. I just, the history's there.
Same two teams, too.
Yeah, same two teams. So I just have this feeling about it. Again, Marchessault, we'll see. Ryan O'Reilly's the name out there. But again, I go back to it. You had the pieces. Maybe the Nashville Predators have hired the wrong coaches to allow those players to succeed. Because every player that's left this team has had success elsewhere. Tolvanen in Seattle. Novak
Rangers South.
Rangers South, right? You go to Alex Carrier last year. Doing well in Montreal. Justin Barron for Alexander Carrier. Again, Trotz is trying to remodel the team in his image. Again, I'll say this. I was going to tweet this out, but since I'm going to save this for the show. Lou Lamoriello, agree with him, disagree with him about the timing of the coaching changes and when he fired coaches, at least decided, you know what, it's not working. I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to take over. Now, I don't know if Barry's going to take over on an interim basis. Doesn't sound like he wants to. But at some point, you got to get the loyalty out of this thing and say, I got to cut bait at some point and bring in somebody because Pete DeBoer's right there. And that might be a spot.
I can't see Pete DeBoer being attracted to what's going on in Nashville.
No, I don't think so either, but I'm just saying.
Pete DeBoer is like, and I'm going to borrow a phrase from Kevin O'Leary, a.k.a. Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank. Okay? I like to take my money and use it as an accelerant to, take whatever you've got and blow it up. Okay? Pete DeBoer is that type of coach. He's the type of coach who comes in, sort of the missing piece or one of two missing pieces, and blows it up and helps the team really, go from to okay, they're contending for a cup, even though he's never actually won it.
No.
Okay? He's not going to come to a team, Pete DeBoer, that is withering away and has, that looks like they could be lottery bound.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Pete DeBoer is the answer, so to speak, there. And honestly, like with all the retread coaches that there are in the league, like who would even come? Does Barry Trotz call up Bruce Boudreau?
I think if I'm the Nashville Predators, I'm trying to go the Pittsburgh route and maybe trying to find a guy like Dan Muse and bring a guy find my own guy like that to help this team. If we're going younger, we're going faster, we're going a little bigger, images of Barry Trotz players, that's fine.
Well, hey, if you're going off the Pittsburgh Mike Sullivan tree angle, go try Sato from the Rangers.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll say one more thing on this Nashville thing real quick. I think the fact of the matter is look, they made some poor decisions based on expectations, false expectations. They should have just gone in that summer instead of just going all in on the free agents. Should have gone the young route then. That would have been the right decision. And now they're just paying for it. And this rebuild could be a lot longer. It could be a Buffalo Sabres type rebuild.
Yikes, that's not what you want to hear.
No, it's not.
All right, well, Jim, we're at that point of the show. Our producer is yelling at us to go to our non-existent sponsor break. So we'll be back with more Blue Line Blast podcast on the other side of this non-existent sponsor break. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from our non-existent sponsor break. This is the Blue Line Blast podcast, and we're now joined by a legendary Islander. He's in the Islanders Hall of Fame, Brent Sutter, and of course, Brent's got a lot more than just the Islanders on his resume. Head coach of the Devils, the Flames. He's part of the CHL right now. Brent, welcome to the Blue Line Blast podcast.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, Brent. And, you do a lot of stuff, CHL, and obviously you still probably are watching the NHL game. And obviously one of the teams, two teams you've coached, Calgary and New Jersey. And I just wanted to ask if you've had a chance to watch them this year and, just see what stands out to you.
Well, I think they're obviously two different types of teams. I've seen a few of their games. I don't watch every game, but I watch a lot of NHL games on nights when we don't play. But obviously New Jersey's a high octane team. Lots of skill. They can skate. Their back end is very active. And they've been together now for a couple or 3 years with a lot of these young guys and letting them grow together. And I think they got a heck of a team. It just takes time when you're going through the growth that they're going through. And with the Flames, they're a team that's on that kind of that retooling stage. Like they obviously got some tough decisions to make from now to the trade deadline, and I'm sure Craig and his staff will sort through that. Yeah, it's like two different teams right now because of where they're at, and they're at the stage they're in.
And no, definitely different stages for the Devils in Calgary. And, another of your former teams, the Islanders, have a whiz kid, I guess is the only way to put it, in Matthew Schaefer. Have you got a chance to watch Schaefer at all? And just if so, what have you seen out of him?
Well, obviously he's a special player, and obviously a very talented young defenseman that can skate, make plays. He's very active. The Islanders somebody like that for a long time. They had an opportunity to get him in this past year's draft, and he's not disappointing. He's obviously one of the arguably one of the top young players in the league today. So, and on the Islanders, it's they're obviously changed. There's change there obviously when it started with obviously the management side of it with Lou and they changed some assistant coaches up and like again when you get a player like Schaefer, you got to bring him. You got to build your team around guys like that, right? Obviously they're high end players and are going to be obviously superstars in the league for a long period of time. So I'm sure that the Islanders are looking at probably doing that over the period of time here.
Yeah, I mean, the Islanders have such a great young team. Like you said, the Devils are having their young guys as well. Same with the Flames, since they're on two different trajectories. And, just a real quick question on just when a team's going through a rebuild and a retool, what's it like for a coach behind the bench? How do you get those guys motivated every night?
Number one, it shouldn't be hard because they're all trying to, especially those young guys trying to just want to stay in the NHL and be difference makers. And, it's obviously it's important to have good leadership around them, right type of older players around those kids. And as a coach, you gotta, you put them in situations to succeed. They're gonna get minutes playing in the best league in the world that, for the first time they may not be getting. So, yeah, I mean it's definitely different, but you know what? You got to be patient. That's the other thing too with it is when you're working with young players, patient, and they got to grow, and everyone grows at different rates and matures at a different rate. So patience is a big part of it.
Right now, Brent, we obviously have a lot of things that we can pick your brains on. And one of the things here is, during your career, you were quite the face-off man. And that's something that a lot of teams currently, you hear about them. Oh, they're trying to work on being better at face-offs in order to help with their offense, in order to have more possession. What are, in your opinion, some of the tricks of the trade to really help players be better at the face-off dot?
Well, the rules for face-offs now are so different from how they used to be. Like you would do whatever it took to win a draw before, and cheating became part of that. But and then when I say that, you could, they didn't have the where your feet had to be placed a certain way or anything like that. You always went to, I was always one guy in the defensive zone that believed you always win draws to the boards. If you ever happen to get yourself in trouble, then that's where you want to get yourself in trouble in, and is along the boards at the puck and not out in the middle of the ice off a face-off. So, it's definitely changed. The rules have changed a lot on face-offs, and nowadays it doesn't matter whether they win pucks to the boards to the middle of the ice. Centermen are going to their strengths and turning their hand over and using their strengths. And and you don't see as much in today's game. You don't see as much twisting as you used to, using their skates on draws. It was, back then it was an art, but it was a different type of art. And so if you were having trouble with a guy on a draw, you would in the neutral zone, you wouldn't even worry about the face-off. You'd run him right over, right? And good, bad, or indifferent. That's what you do. And then the next face-off, you had him thinking. You got in his head a little bit. So, so you just did different things. Brian Trotchy was great at that. One of the best face-off fans there were in the game. And if he was having trouble one night with someone, they paid the price for him to take a face-off against them, and then it got the opposition thinking about that, right? So, and I had an opportunity, obviously, to play with Trotch for quite a few years, and Bushy Gorin, and two of the better face-off men that ever played in the NHL, and I had an opportunity to play with them, and I learned a lot through them, and grew as a center iceman, and grew as one of the better face-off men in the league. And again, I don't think players take it for granted, maybe more than they should, that face-offs are such an important part of the game for puck possession time. And you win face-offs in power play in the offensive zone. You get to start the puck right away, with the puck, and working on your, trying to work on your offensive ability to try to score a goal. You lose the puck in penalty killing, your 20 seconds of the power play is basically killed, because once the puck shot down the ice. So face-offs are very important. 5-on-5 are very important. Again, it's puck possession time, and the team that has the puck more in a game, and more often than not, ends up winning the hockey game.
Yeah, and now you've transitioned from coaching, general manager, now scouting and all that with the Red Deer Rebels. And how did that transition happen? And what are you looking for when you're putting a team together?
Well, the transition went, I came back, and I was, we bought the team, bought the Rebels, and couldn't afford to hire anybody for what I had to pay for them. So I had coach and GM, and, and I guess you grow in that a lot. You develop yourself into being a good coach, and had an opportunity to coach World Juniors and win some gold medals in that. And then you go pro, and it was good to go there for 5 years and coach pro hockey, and then you really get a balance when you come back, and understanding, like, when you were coaching at the pro level, when kids were coming in from junior, and you see them come to training camp, and where they're at with their development, and how much farther they need to get to be National Hockey League players. So that all helps you when you come back, right? And then but then during COVID, it just wasn't much fun coaching through COVID, and I just decided, I was contemplating whether to do it the following year anyway, and I had a discussion with a couple of my staff people, and decision was for me to step away from it. And it worked out okay, because I got to go down and see some scouting down in the States, because there wasn't any restrictions down in the US like there was in Canada. So I went down and watched some players play, which was really good, and some American kids, and and then you become a general manager, and it's all about building teams, and what type of team you like to have, but it takes time. It's a process. It just doesn't happen overnight. These kids, when you're getting them in at 15, 16 years of age, they don't really get to the level that you want them to be at until they're like 18, 19. So it takes time with that, right? And I thought we did a real, I think the rules certainly have changed things a lot with the NCAA, for sure. And we got to adapt and adjust to that as managers, and try to build our teams the best we can for a 2 or 3 year window.
Very, very well said, Brendan. Now, I want to preface this question, and it's a two-parter, sort of. You mentioned a few minutes ago about how you didn't have the money to pay all the people that they were going to need when you first took over the Red Deer Rebels. Couldn't you just call up anyone in your family? I mean, you come from the biggest hockey family the NHL has ever seen, and you couldn't just say to a couple cousins or someone, "Hey, listen, until we get going, you got some great hockey minds." But and then also, as you mentioned with the CHL, what are some of those challenges that you're now seeing with the changing landscape?
Well, for starters, anybody asked to come and do, they'd be asking for too much money, so I'd be broke. But
wow, no freebies even for family.
Oh, no freebies.
No freebies.
And everyone was busy, so but it's all good. The challenge, really, to be quite honest, is when you lose these players where these teams are just coming and taking kids out of your programs without even talking to you or whatever, and they get them for free, and that's what's really troublesome is that we have to pay for development money to programs these kids come from. The National Hockey League has to pay for development money when they come from our program. Why does the NCAA not have to pay any development money? Just take the players and not pay anything. I don't believe that is right at all. And so there's things still to work through. The fact that we lost our captain in Red Deer, and it's still, and it will always bother me it happened that way it did. The fact that 2.5 weeks before training camp and the player all summer long was on board, and then goes to the Hockey Team Canada training camp, the World Junior Camp in Minnesota, and then I get a call 5 days later he's going to join North Dakota, and never once did I ever have a conversation with North Dakota. Like, they picked up the phone and talked to you about it or anything, and to me that's wrong. That to me is not the way you should do business. And again, the NCAA doesn't care about that, but it's hard for the Red Deer Rebels now to look to North Dakota in their eyes and think that they're welcome in our building or whatever. I mean, when you go about the back door of things, and I was disappointed in the player and the agent. I mean, just the way they handled it and the way they did it, I didn't think it was. It's good for our game to happen like that, and you find out a lot about what loyalty is, and and honesty. And so anyway, it is what it is, and you move on. But the funny thing is, you don't replace players like that. Like, it's hard to replace top end talent. So but anyway, you move on and you get ready and for your season the best you can, and other kids get the opportunity they may not have got if that individual is still here. So it's kind of works both sides of it.
Yeah, no, that's totally understandable. It is a business these days, but it's an unfortunate side of the business, as we see not only up there, but down here with the NIL, even in college football and other sports. My last question for you, Brent, is, you mentioned it earlier about the World Juniors, and, it seems there's always a lot of scrutiny on these players, but I'm going to take it away from the player side. You said you coached, Team Canada. What was that feeling like for you? And, end everything here on a high note with coaching Team Canada, winning those World Junior goals with those teams, and the lessons and everything that you instilled in those players so they could be good NHLers.
Well, I was very fortunate to coach two really good hockey teams, and I mean, arguably the team in 2005 was the best team ever assembled, and that was during the lockout year. And there's probably 7 or 8 guys in that team would have been playing the NHL that year in the World Juniors, and if the NHL was going at the time. So, when you're talking about the Crosbys, the Bergerons, the Perrys, the Getzlaffs, the Carters, the Richards, the Fanuffs, the Webbers, the Colburns, it's just the list, the Seabrooks, the list just goes on, and they're all top end guys. They all became great professionals, great at their craft, star players on their teams. A lot of them end up being captains on their team. And we obviously had a dominant series and Ovechkin was playing for Russia, and we played it in North Dakota and Grand Forks, and we played obviously extremely well, but we were obviously a very good team, and we won that. And then the following year, it was such a unique group. It was such a strong character group, and that was players like the Jonathan Tazes and Luc Bourdons, and again, just kids that they wanted, because they heard so much about the team from the year before, just whether they read it or whatever. They wanted to prove that they could be better than that team the year before, and they were. As far as goals for, goals against, we just had a great group of kids, and we had 21 new players on that team, and they all just bought in, and away we went. And to me, both were obviously thrilling, and they both were great accomplishments, and they're both done in kind of two different ways. But it was a great experience. It was great coaching individuals like that, learning a lot from them. Hopefully, they learned a lot from our coaching staff, and yeah, you look at both those teams. A lot of those guys were great NHL players, and from both those teams. So I was very blessed and privileged to be able to have the opportunity to coach them.
Well, it's been a blessing and a privilege to have you on the Blue Line Blast podcast here, Brent. So, we thank you for taking the time to talk with us tonight. And, we hope all is well out in Red Deer. And, Jim, we'll be back with more after another non-existent sponsor break.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from our second non-existent sponsor break of the show. There we go, Jim, holding up the mugs. That's where we're gonna put the sponsor logo when we finally get one.
You're gonna get me one? I thought that we're gonna get me one for the holidays.
Yeah, no, that too. We're gonna print you out a mug that says non-existent sponsor break on it. But that was a great hockey talk with our guest and Islander Hall of Famer Brent Sutter. Jim, he really is a wealth of knowledge on all levels of hockey. I half want to go out and try doing face-offs his old way, and just see where it gets me. Although,
yeah, it's not going to get you far. I used to do those moves all the time. Didn't work for me. I just stuck with just trying to win them and lifting sticks and stuff like that. And look, great guest. Great to have him on. Stanley Cup champion, coach, up and down the lineup. He's done it all, right? Just great to talk to him, the stories, everything you hear. And yeah, again, we've discussed it on the show before. We've said, you heard about it, the CHL, NCAA thing. Again, there's two sides to everything. He's on the other side of it. And, again, it's tough these days with the changing landscapes. And look, there's a lot of changing landscapes. We talked about Vancouver, Nashville. We mentioned his team, Calgary. We didn't dive too deep into it. We sprinkled a little bit here because they're on a different side than New Jersey. But it feels like there's mixed signals coming from the Calgary Flames. And I'm going to lay this out for you real quick. You have Don Maloney come out, president of hockey operations, having all these conversations talking about how, while we want to get younger, but we don't want to move off of veterans, we feel we're still a playoff team. And the Flames, ever since that episode, the Flames have gone on a heater. No pun intended. But, he's on fire, NBA Jam style. But, look, they've won 3 in a row. Rasmus Anderson's playing well. First start of the week. It's interesting to hear from the president of hockey operations when we haven't heard from the GM since the golf outing. When it's like, yeah, we're kind of trying to build younger, try to get ready for the new building in Calgary. It just feels like there's a disconnect somewhere.
Oh, Jim, there's a big disconnect there. And look, not this past summer, but the summer before, I was covering the New York State Hockey Hall of Fame induction ceremony, like I always do, up in Troy, and they inducted Fred Conroy in. And Conroy, I believe he was just getting set to be GM of the Flames at the time, officially taking over. And one of the things we talked about was, how he would like to mold the team. And, he definitely, he wanted to get younger. But he still wanted to compete. You have to toe that fine line. Jim, there's no such thing as towing that fine line in today's NHL. Okay, with the parity that exists, and this might be the most parity we've ever seen in the league's history, you can either you rebuild or you're a contender. If you get stuck in that mushy middle, there's nothing worse than being stuck in that mushy middle. Okay? Go ask any team that finished between that drafted between 10th overall and 22nd overall. Okay? Those teams right there, those 12 teams, nightmare zone to be in. Okay?
Yeah.
You either want to be drafting 23rd to 32nd because it means that you're a playoff team and you're going places, or you want to be drafting, 1 through 9 because, top end of the first round, that's where the money makers are. So, that's where, rebuilding teams are going to get those players that are going to turn them into the contenders. But if you're not a contender and you're not a rebuilder, you're a pretender. And unfortunately, that's what the Calgary Flames are right now.
Yeah, it's a tough position to be in because a couple of years ago they had all these UFAs they could just move out and get all these pieces for, and Craig Conroy did a good job, and Connie and his staff they did a really good job, and they extended some of those guys, and they have a nice core there, surrounded by Dustin Wolf, who got his new extension, Matty Coronado's there, Connor Zary, Kevin Ball's there, Sharon Govich, former Devils, there as well. Nazem Kadri's the veteran. Obviously, Rasmus Anderson's still kind of hanging around. Is he going to stay? Is he not going to stay? What are they going to do? It's interesting because you want to compete, yes, but it's like you're past the 20-game mark and teams are going to call, but it's just so interesting to hear from a guy, the president of hockey ops. Usually we're hearing from the GM. Now, granted, we've heard from other president of hockey ops before, but this just feels different because I don't know what the plan is in Calgary because it just feels like there's two different plans. And to try to be in that murky middle all the time, the mushy middle, is not good. And the fact that, you know what? I don't take offense to things that often, but when you're telling me we're living in a fantasy world or fantasy hockey, or when you hope to get the first round, if you scout, amateur pro scout the right way, players in the top 5 can change your franchise. They can. You may not land the McKennas or the Bedards or Celebrinis, but you can find some good draft picks. So it's not wishful thinking or fantasy hockey or any of that stuff. The Calgary Flames need a player like Gavin McKenna because they haven't had one. And they need to draft in the top 5. But again, it comes down to what the plan is from ownership, because you have guys there like a Nazem Kadri who signed there as a free agent. What kind of message does that send to other free agents saying, hey, if he can get traded, we might get traded? So I think they want to surround their young guys, because I agree. The one thing I agree with Maloney, Trotz, and a couple other execs, you just don't want to throw young players to the wolves, because that doesn't do them any good. It doesn't do the team any good, and it creates a culture of losing, as we've seen in Buffalo, and it's hard to get out of that culture of losing.
It is, Jim, and you also have to be very careful with who you try to build around that aren't the young players. So, young players are on their entry-level contract. You have a little bit of time before you actually have to commit or not to them.
Mm-hmm.
But when you commit to guys like a Jonathan Huberdeau, and yes, I know everyone, still talks about that trade, to Chuck for Huberdeau. Jonathan Huberdeau has not been anywhere near the same type of player that he was in Florida. Now, obviously, he's got a different cast of talent around him, so that, you can never just solely pin it on only the player, really, you have to also look at what the player is working with. But, Jim, the Calgary Flames are being burned, no pun intended, by the fact that they thought they were going to be able to build around Jonathan Huberdeau and a couple of other players. And Jonathan Huberdeau has proven that he's not someone you want to build around.
He's a complimentary piece, because when he was in Florida, he was off the rush type player with Barkov and all those guys. And you could clearly see that he's not a guy that drives the line, but he played well with Nazem Kadri. And Kadri's a guy I would build around. In fact, again, who knows with Rasmus Anderson? He could end up
Gonzo.
I mean, we all say it, but he could end up signing an extension. Like because at this point, the only reason you didn't leave in the summer is because something in management said no. So, but look, I'll say this: I think the Flames need to have a hard look in the mirror about roster construction, about scouting, all this stuff to get the right type of players they want in there. Because I mean, let's just bring it to this area. I mean, Chris Drury, like, what is he doing with the New York Rangers right now? Like, I just don't get it. I didn't understand the extension. He took a President's Trophy winning team and basically said it's not good enough. And now we're putting guys on waivers that you gave extensions to because you have a volatile owner. Make it make sense for me, please.
So I know we kill the Rangers and Drury on here a lot, and I'm about to, but I'm not going to kill him on putting Parsons.
No, I have no problem with that, but it's just the other stuff.
That one's actually him doing the right thing by, instead of doubling down on a mistake, and he's cutting ties with the mistake. So I will give him some credit on that. I will say, however, Drury, I mean, as you just said with Calgary, you want to bring in the players who you want to be there, right? Chris Drury brought in the player and the coach he wanted there. He brought in JT Miller. He brought in Mike Sullivan. He wanted Chris Kreider gone. He wanted Jacob Trouba gone. He did. He made the team into the image that he wanted. The problem is the image is a flawed image, and he did not do that well. If you look at it, he wanted the Rangers to be tougher to play against. Okay, the Rangers may have been a little too skill, a little too top-end skill, not enough grit. That is true. That's exactly what they were when they won the President's Trophy and why they didn't make it past Florida. But, Jim, now they lack the skill and
they lack the grit, too, let's be honest.
And they lack the grit. So,
I mean, it's a bad combination right now. Like, it really is. Like, look, yeah, they won a home game. They beat St. Louis.
Big whoop.
Big whoop. And they barely beat St. Louis. Because St. Louis, if it wasn't for Shesterkin, it could have been a tie game, and it goes to overtime.
Quite honestly, if there would have been 5 more minutes of regulation, that game goes to overtime, and they probably lose.
Yeah, exactly. And they have 2 regulation wins on home ice. Like, look, I think there's some bigger decisions that need to come out of New York. One of which is Artemi Panarin. What you want to do with him. But I'm not sure if Chris Drury should be the guy to do it. But the problem is his contract says he is the guy. Because I just don't know if James Dolan's going to say, I'm cutting bait with another general manager.
That's because James Dolan doesn't know as much as... And actually, I can't even say what I was about to say. James Dolan doesn't really know hockey, really.
No. Does he know basketball? No.
He knows more basketball than he knows hockey.
Okay? That's debatable.
Whether that's knowing a little bit versus nothing, okay, but he does know more basketball than he knows hockey. And this is the guy who stuck with Isaiah Thomas all those years, okay? So it doesn't surprise me that he's sticking with Chris Drury. Heck, he stuck with Glenn Sather. After Sather, passed the baton to Jeff Gordon, he still kept Sather on as a senior advisor. And he didn't keep him on as a senior advisor to Gordon. He kept him on as a senior advisor to himself.
Yeah.
So, Dolan likes to try to surround himself with people he thinks are smart. Not to say Glenn Sather's not. I mean, Glenn Sather, a Hall of Famer, obviously, Sather's career speaks for itself. But Drury sort of came in that power vacuum moment where, Dolan wasn't going to get Messier to come on board. Whether he actually wanted Messier on board or not remains to be seen. But, that was the rumor that he wanted Messier in a position of power. I don't think the Rangers would have been any better off with Messier.
I'm going to be honest. Look, you might have heard the same thing I've heard. I've heard this about the GMs, well, outside of Craig Conroy, because I think everybody speaks highly of Craig Conroy. The 2 guys we've mentioned, Barry Trotz and Chris Drury, talk to multiple people, I get the same answer. Do they know what they're doing?
And well, so here's the thing. Barry Trotz was a very successful head coach.
Yeah, he's a coach, but GM is different.
Yes, GM is different, but you can at least be comfort in the knowledge that Barry Trotz knows the game more than just as a star player. He knows how to think the game. Now, whether he knows how to construct a roster, obviously that's not showing so well right now, but he knows how to think the game because his career as a head coach shows he knows how to think the game. Messier, on the other hand, okay, yeah, he was a great player, phenomenal player, one of the best of all time. There's nothing to show that he knows how to think the game.
No.
So, it would be a much worse situation there.
Yeah.
And, getting back to Chris Drury, I mean, one of the things I've heard, Drury likes to try to be smarter than what he is. No one thought when he was a player, oh, this guy is a future or general manager, a future president of hockey ops.
No.
You see it sometimes, like Alexander Steen with the Blues. Like, he's going to be taking over. But, like, you sort of knew that his career would be in the front office at some point after. Like, it was said about him a lot during his playing days. Rick Nash, you knew he was going to sort of be in the front office somewhere, after his playing days. Maybe not as a GM, but you knew he was going to be somewhere in the front office.
Somewhere.
Did you ever hear that about Chris Drury?
Absolutely
not.
Not. No, absolutely not. Not a chance. Didn't hear about it. Look, and the thing was, Alexander Steen, like Marty Brodeur, like a lot of these guys were being groomed, right? Like, they start as assistant GMs. They work their way up.
Was groomed. You can't say Drury wasn't groomed.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I'll debate on that because
he was the assistant GM under Gordon. He was in charge of Hartford. Not that the Hartford was good during that time.
Not the Wolf.
He was
they're good. Yeah, but again, the way he got the job, the stuff, the backroom deals, all this stuff. Again, would I have made the change? No. But again, you try to hot shot championships in New York, and this is what happens. So, again, do you want the 5-6 year rebuild to do it right? Because the Rangers were doing it right. Or do you want to hot shot it? Because if you want to hot shot it, this is the mess you end up with.
In other words, they're the New York Jets, who every couple of years try to hot shot, being like, oh, we've got a couple of good young pieces. Now we're going to go try to spend money, and it blows up in their face. And Jim, I think that's all I have to say on the matter.
Hey, if we're gonna end on the Jet note, I'll just take us home. I mean, I'll just take us home, guys.
Just take us home at this point. And ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving. Have some great turkey. Have some great mashed potatoes. Have cranberry sauce, stuffing, whatever you have. And we'll be back next week with another great guest on Tuesday night, not Monday night. And we'll examine exactly which teams might actually stick in their playoff spots now that the Thanksgiving marker will have come and gone.
We'll see what happens. Guys, Blue Line Blast Podcast. Get it up on YouTube. Subscribe, like, comment, follow along. Jim Biringer, Matthew Blittner. Guys, we'll see you.